Have you realized lately that your grocery shopping bags are becoming lighter even though you've been spending the same amount? Well, it's no longer news that things are getting more expensive every day. Come on, the price of gas in the US went up by 58% last year, and beef by 21%. There's no doubt this is hitting us pretty hard. And since there aren't many things we can do to help out, wouldn't it feel a little bit better if we knew exactly what was causing it? Of course it would, which is why in this video we're taking a look at 10 reasons why things are super expensive. Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Starting off with the obvious, number 1, inflation. We've definitely heard this term thrown around, and you already know it refers to an increase in the price of goods and services. And while you might think this would typically affect the price of groceries and everyday items, it affects everything else too, from flight tickets to credit card charges and a basketball game ticket. So, simply put, if a country experiences a rise in inflation, its people will naturally have to increase their cost of living. And this means you might pay $40 for an item you used to pay $20 for, with no change in quality or quantity. Number 2, government regulation. Sometimes inflation can be caused by new laws from the government. Take, for instance, the government imposing a new tariff on importers and exporters, making it slightly more expensive to move goods in and out of the country. Now, since these new laws cause importers to spend more money, these folks increase the price of goods. Then the folks who buy from the importers notice this change in price. They still buy it, but sell it to you at a slightly higher price. And there you go, inflation slowly creeping into the economy. Number 3, change in exchange rate. The foreign exchange market is another factor that increases the price of things. Here's how it works. The Forex market is a place where currencies can be used to buy other currencies. Basically, it's a place where you can use your money to buy a different kind of money. Now, this exchange is based on the value of the currencies involved. So if the dollar dips against the euro, it means I can buy more items with 20 euro than I can buy with $20. We know what you're thinking. How could this affect the price of products in my own country? Well, it's almost like how government regulations work. We now live in a global market, and a number of goods are imported from other countries. So if the dollar dips against the currency of the country exporting to us, then we have to pay more because the dollar has lesser purchasing power when placed side by side with this other currency. Again, it's only a matter of time before this becomes full-blown inflation. Number 4, national debt. Debt sucks, and you probably guessed that most governments around the world will agree with that phrase. We know you might shrug off the possibility of a national debt affecting you. After all, you didn't ask the president to take a loan. Well, you already know how much we hate to ruin the party, but it kinda does affect you big time. National debt doesn't directly cause an increase in the price of our goods, but there's a spiral effect that could show itself in 3 indirect ways. First off, national debt can force a government to increase taxes, and it'll then use these taxes to repay its debt. Sounds like a fair deal, right? Well, not really. The thing is, most governments increase corporate taxes, which means that all companies and organizations will be paying more taxes than usual. And to recover from this loss, they'll also increase the price of goods and services that they offer, and that's exactly where it affects you. Secondly, the government can try a different approach, to print more money. And if you've been watching our videos for a while now, you know how problematic that is. When the government prints more money, it results in having too much money in circulation. And if there's too much money around, it wouldn't be so valuable anymore now, would it? This leads to having too much money around for very few goods. And since the currency is worth way less than usual, the prices of imported goods will be higher. And lastly, a country can take the hard way out and default on the debt. Now, here's one method that is not recommended, as it will lead to drastic economic effects. For starters, this country wouldn't be able to borrow any more money, and if it does, it'll pay a higher interest, which again leads back to higher taxes and more money in circulation. Number 5. Expanded money supply. We took a quick look at this in the previous point, but let's take a closer look. Printing more money builds an expanded money supply, and this means a country is printing more money than its economic growth rate can actually handle. So in economic terms, the money supply in circulation has to always match its economic output. Think of it like an auction. 500 individuals are bidding to buy an antique piece of art. The first bidder says $1 million, and this number picks up all the way to, say, $50 million. Now, at the start of the auction, $1 million was worth a lot, but the more bidders and the higher the price went, the value of that $1 million reduced in that situation, didn't it? That's exactly how printing more money affects the value of money and the eventual price of goods and services. Number 6. Rising wages. Rising wages? Come on, how can that be why things are so expensive? Doesn't it mean we've got more money to spend on stuff? Well, the interesting thing is, you're not wrong, but that's exactly where the inflation happens. Now, here's something you should know. An increase in the cost of goods isn't always a bad thing. In fact, some countries see mild inflation as a sign of a growing economy. But with higher wages, we have more purchasing power, which also means there will be an increase in demand. And at this point, the manufacturer of a good or supplier of a service notices this trend and increases the prices of their products to match. Again, this results in more jobs and more money in circulation, and the wheel of inflation goes around and around again. Number 7. Shrinkflation. Now here's a factor that technically doesn't affect the price of a product, but the quantity. Shrinkflation is the process of reducing the size or quantity of a product while still selling it at the same price. Now, most times this happens in the food and beverage industry, and as sneaky as it might sound, it isn't illegal in any form. This is because companies are required to always state the weight, size, and quality of a product on its packaging, and in fact, they always do. They just know we never check it out. Most manufacturers are worried that outrightly changing the price of their products might push some of their customers to a competitor, so they choose this path. And this way, you're paying the same amount for a reduced quantity. And if you eventually discover this reduction and would rather get the former quantity you enjoyed, well, then you're gonna have to pay more. Most times, shrinkflation is caused by an increase in the cost of production, which is further complicated by insane market competition. Number 8. Hoarding. Again, here's another not-so-honest factor. Hoarding is a process whereby someone hides a certain product and doesn't release them to the general public until the demand for this product becomes unbearable. Imagine a person hoarding face masks during the pandemic, only to release them when everyone in the entire world was in need. Naturally, when an essential product becomes increasingly scarce due to hoarding, the demand for the product simultaneously increases. So when this hoarder decides to finally release the product to the general public, they're sure we'd be willing to pay more than it's initially worth. This dishonest method is usually employed by producers and sometimes middlemen, and it artificially creates an excess of demand in a country. These same hoarders then jump onto this demand, eventually leading to inflation. Have you ever had an inclination that a scarcity was deliberately caused by the manufacturer? Well, there's a slight chance you might be right. However, unlike shrinkflation, hoarding is highly illegal, and if you're caught in the act, then you've got years of prison time ahead of you. Number 9. Demand pull. Ever since the pandemic ended, there's been a huge rise in demand, and unfortunately, supply has remained mostly the same or failed to catch up with that growing demand. For example, the demand in gas has increased because there are more people driving and traveling again, which in turn has resulted in a price hike for hotel rooms and traveling tickets. Basically, there are more people trying to buy several goods, but the items in circulation aren't enough for all of us. Eventually, the prices are increased and these available goods will only be sold to those who can afford them. Number 10. Cost push. Cost-push inflation reflects the fact that we mentioned at the start. If a producer has to spend more money to get their goods to the final consumer, then that consumer is going to be paying more for the product. And unfortunately, nature can affect this cost-push inflation. Let's say you own a company that specializes in making tires, but instead of owning rubber trees, which is an important raw material, you decide to buy from a company that specializes in that. Now, unfortunately, this company suffers a mishap. A crazy storm destroys more than half of their trees. Now, if this affects the major suppliers of rubber, it means that the industry can supply only a fraction of the rubber to the producers, like you. And since that rubber is limited, it'll be sold at a higher price. You also want to maximize profits, so you decide to hike up the price of one tire by a few dollars each. And there you have it, inflation in the works. Now, you can't blame the store attendant for a crazy hike in prices. It really isn't any of their fault. And if you notice you're going broke way faster than usual, don't be so quick to blame your spending habits, because it could just be on all of the factors listed above. You're doing your best, A-Luxer, and inflation shouldn't make you feel any less. Did you watch our video up until this point? Well, that's pretty awesome. You're a true A-Luxer, so as a token of our appreciation, here's a bonus. Number 11, imported inflation. Now, imported inflation is a bit of an interesting one. If the global price of a product increases, it's only natural that the price of this product will remain increased when the product is imported into your country. And if your country's currency is constantly losing its value, then the price of this product will shoot even higher. Thank you for watching this video, A-Luxer. If you found it valuable, consider subscribing to our channel and joining our awesome community. And if you're still hungry for more, we handpicked this video for you to watch next. Or head over to our website for more amazing content. See you tomorrow.